Today, my topic is Nathaniel Hawthorne's novel The Scarlet Letter. About Nathaniel Hawthorne, he was born in 1804 at Salem, Massachusetts. He has been called a romantic of Puritanism and a moralist. Few years he worked as a supervisor in a customs house. That experience later he expressed in his novel. He is a social critic who examines critically the special code of his Puritan ancestors and brings out its rigidity and harshness. He had an admirable talent for symbolism and a serious interest in historical fidelity, psychological truth, and social order. His famous novel, The Scarlet Letter, published in the year 1856. Of course, it is his masterpiece, which is set in 17th century Salem at the height of Puritan theocracy, and which is considered the first psychological novel in American literature. His famous works are The Scarlet Letter, The House of the Seven Gables, The Blithedale Romance, and many. The theme of the story is conflict between passionate women and her stern Puritan judges. Here characters of the story Scarlet Letter. The first main character of the story is Easter Prynne. She is the heroine of the story. She is a young woman who is sent to the colonies by her husband. She is a symbol of the acknowledged sinner in this story. The next main character is Reverend Arthur Dimmesdale. And Dimmesdale is the unmarried pastor. And he is a symbol of the secret sinner. The next character is Pearl. Pearl is the illegitimate daughter of Easter Prynne and Arthur Dimmesdale. And she is a symbol of the product of the act of adultery and of an act of passion and love. The next character is Roger Chillingworth, of course villain of the story, and he is a husband of Easter Prynne. He is symbol of evil. The next character is Governor Bellingham. He witnesses Easter's punishment and is a symbol of civil authority. The next one is Mistress Hebbin. She is a sister of Governor Bellingham, who was executed for witchcraft in the year 1656. In the novel, she has insight into the sins of both Easter and Dimmesdale, and she is a symbol of super or evil powers. The next major character is John Wilson. He is a symbol of religious authority. Here Arthur Dimmesdale, Governor Bellingham and John Wilson. These three characters are judges in this story, and they are going to analyze the case of Easter Perrin. This story is actually based on the real incident. Introduction on the Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. It, along with the custom house sketch that prefaces it, is a good example to demonstrate the way historical events find place in literature, sometimes as themes and sometimes as backdrop. It provides a picture of Puritan society with its hierarchies, its harsh codes of behavior, and the penalties that it imposed to keep aberrant and erring men and women within its strict social controls. And it is set in the natural environment of New England, with its woods and its seashore offering places of refuge for the individual. The romance is set in the period of the Salem witch trials, when many witches were executed. Chapter 1. The name of the chapter is The Prison Door. In this first chapter, Hawthorne sets the scene of the novel. That is, the place is Boston of the 17th century. It is June month, and a throng of drably dressed Puritans stands before a wooden prison. In front of the prison stands an unsightly plot of weeds, and beside it grows a wild rose bush, which seems the scene dominated by the dark colors. So from the prison door, the heroine of the story, that is Easter Perrin, is coming out from the prison door with her daughter. The rose bush, its beauty, a striking contrast to all that surrounds it. Throughout the work, the nature images contrast with the darkness of the Puritan and their systems. The Puritan society is symbolized in the first chapter by the plot of weeds growing so profusely in front of the prison. Nevertheless, nature also includes things of beauty represented by the wild rose bush. In another aspect, it is beautiful, offering fragrant and fragile beauty to the prisoner. In one more aspect, it is a token that the deep heart of nature could pity and be kind to the prisoner entering the structure, or the condemned criminal as he or she came forth to his doom. Here the second chapter, the marketplace. The Puritan women waiting outside the prison self-righteously and aggressively discuss Easter Perrin and her sin. But Easter is here proud and beautiful and emerges from the prison. So here she is looking very proud and as well as beautiful. With the bold enough, she is coming out from the prison. She wears an elaborately embroidered scarlet letter A on her breast. A stands for adultery. And she carries a 3-month-old infant in her arms. Easter is led through the unsympathetic crowd to the scaffold of the pillory. So that is raised platform. It is used as a means of punishment. Standing alone on the scaffold as punishment for her adulterous behavior. On that time, she remembers her past life in England and on the European continent. Suddenly becoming aware of the stern faces looking up at her, Easter painfully realizes her present position of shame and punishment. So here the people are criticizing Easter and her beauty. Because of that only she has committed sin. So the second chapter also contains a description of the Puritan society and reveals Hawthorne's critical attitude towards it. The smugly pious attitude of the women assembled in front of the prison who condemn Easter is frightening, especially when we hear them suggest that Easter should be scalded with a hot iron applied to her forehead to mark her for an immoral act. The most startling part of her appearance is the scarlet letter A on her dress. What is meant to be a badge of shame is elaborately decorated in threads of gold. The scarlet letter is fantastically embroidered and illuminated. So as the novel progresses, Pearl, the offspring of Easter's adulterous affair, becomes more strongly linked to the scarlet letter A that Easter wears on her clothing. Likewise, both Pearl's and the A's symbolism are also more fully developed. In this chapter, we realized the stern behavior of rude behavior of Puritan women. They suggest to give a cruel punishment to Easter parent. Here, the next chapter is the recognition. In this chapter, we are going to recognize unknown person among the crowd. Of course, that person is none other than Roger Chillingworth, that is husband of Easter Perrin. So among that crowd, Easter recognizes a small, rather deformed man standing on the outskirts of the crowd and clutches Pearl fiercely to her bosom. Meanwhile, the man, a stranger to Boston, recognizes Easter and is horror-struck. Here that man inquiring among the crowd, Easter learns of that person is none other than her husband. The man learns of Easter's history her crime, that is adultery, and her sentence, that is punishment, to stand on the scaffold for 3 hours and to wear the symbolic letter A for the rest of her life. The stranger also learns that Esther refuses to name the man with whom she had the sexual affair. This knowledge greatly upset him, that is Reverend Roger Chillingworth, and he vows that Esther's unnamed partner, he said, I will be known, he will be known, he will be known. The Reverend Mr. Dimmesdale, visibly upset, pleads with Esther to name her partner, that is crime partner. He tells her that she should name her partner in sin because perhaps the man doesn't have the courage to step forward even if he wants to. Yet despite Dimmesdale's passionate appeal, followed by harsher demands from the Reverend Mr. Wilson and from a stern voice in the crowd. But Esther is very stubborn. She doesn't want to mention the name of her partner. Esther steadfastly refuses to name the father of her child. After a long and tedious sermon by the Reverend Mr. Wilson, during which Esther tries ineffectively to quiet Pearl's crying, she is led back to prison. So in this chapter, Hawthorne's portrayal of Chillingworth emphasizes his physical deformity. More important, Chillingworth's misshapen body reflects the evil in his soul. In this same chapter, Hawthorne described the pathetic condition of Dimmesdale. At one level, Dimmesdale gives a public chastisement of Esther for not naming her lover. On another level, he makes a personal plea to her to name him as her lover and Pearl's father because he is too morally weak to do so himself. He begs her to do what he cannot do himself publicly. He is a spiritual leader and as such he is responsible for her moral behavior. The next chapter name is The Interview. Here the interview between Roger Chillingworth and his wife Esther Prynne. So back in her prison cell, Esther is in a state of nervous frenzy and Pearl writhes in painful convulsions. That evening, when Roger Chillingworth enters Esther's prison cell, she fears on his intentions, but he gives Pearl a draught of medicine that eases the child's pain almost immediately and she falls asleep. After, Chillingworth persuades Esther to drink a sedative to calm her frayed nerves. The two sit and talk intimately and sympathetically, each of them accepting a measure of blame for Easter's adulterous affair. Chillingworth, the injured husband, seeks no revenge against Easter, but he is determined to discover the father of Pearl. Although this unidentified man doesn't wear a scarlet A on his clothes as Easter does, Chillingworth vows that he will read it on his heart. He then makes Easter promise not to reveal his identity. So they made an agreement between them. Easter takes an oath to keep Chillingworth's identity a secret. Although she expresses the fear that her vow of silence may prove the ruin of her soul, that is Dimmesdale. Actually, Roger Chillingworth is a scholar, a man who's interested in studies, and he had a talent of reading about human behavior. Unfortunately, he doesn't understand the character of his wife Easter Perrin and himself. So in this chapter we learn that Easter Perrin has never pretended to love her husband, but that she deeply loves the man whom Chillingworth has vowed to punish. So here Easter's promise will make both Easter and Dimmesdale suffer greatly later in the story. The next chapter name is Easter at her Needle. Her term of imprisonment over, Easter is now free to go anywhere in the world. Yet she does not leave Boston. Instead, she chooses to move into a small seaside cottage on the outskirts of town. She supports herself and Pearl through her skills as a seamstress. Her work is in great demand for clothing worn at official ceremonies and among the fashionable women of the town. For every occasion but except a wedding. So this is the Puritan belief. Despite the popularity of her sewing, however, Easter is a social outcast. The target of vicious abuse by the community, she endures the abuse patiently. Ironically, she begins to believe that the scarlet A allows her to sense sinful and immoral feelings in other people. So in this chapter, Easter's cottage between the town and the wilderness, it is physically isolated from the community. The author confirms and builds the image of her that was portrayed in the first scaffold scene, that of an outcast of society being punished for her sin and as a product of nature. In this chapter, we can view the Easter's skill in needlework. People are ready to use her talents for their selfishness, but still they conform to the moral strictness associated with Puritanism, because they are not ready to wear that cloth for weddings. Here the next chapter is about Pearl. During her first 3 years, Pearl, who is so named because she came of great prince, grows into a physically beautiful, vigorous and graceful little girl. She is radiant in the rich and elaborate dresses that Easter sews for her. Inwardly, however, Pearl possesses a complex character. She shows an unusual depth of mind coupled with a fiery passion that Easter is incapable of controlling either with kindness or threats. Pearl shows a love of mischief and a disrespect for authority, which frequently reminds Easter of her own sin of passion. Because both Easter and Pearl are excluded from the society and they are constant companions, when Pearl is on walks with her mother, she occasionally finds herself surrounded by the curious children of the village. Rather than attempt to make friends with them, Pearl pelts them with stones and violent words. So here Pearl is very rude towards the village girls. Pearl's only companion in her playtime is her imagination. Significantly, in her games of make-believe, she never creates friends. She creates only enemies. So this is the actual attitude of Pearl. Puritans whom she pretends to destroy. But the object that most captures her imagination is the scarlet letter A on her mother's clothing. Easter worries that Pearl is possessed by a fiend, an impression strengthened when Pearl denies having a heavenly father and then laughingly demands that Easter tell her where she came from. So in this chapter, we come to know that Pearl is a mischievous and almost unworldly child whose uncontrollable nature reflects the sinful passion that led her to her birth. She is a product and a symbol of the act of adultery, an act of love, an act of passion, a sin and a crime. Here Hawthorne ironically contrasts the Puritan community's treatment of Easter and God's treatment of her. He notes of Easter's fellow citizen and he says man had marked this woman's sin by a scarlet letter which had such potent and disastrous efficacy that no human sympathy could reach her, save it were sinful like herself. Ironically against the Puritan sentence that Easter wear the scarlet letter A is God as a direct consequence of the sin which man thus punished had given her a lovely child. Oh, be finally a blessed soul in heaven. So far, 6 chapters of the story Scarlet Letter is over. The remaining chapters we will see in my next session. Thank you.